Hi, and welcome back to Reverse Shot, the show that dares to turn the camera around and point it at the media and call them on their crap. My name is Brian Karem. Look, I want to start this week, as I start every week, by pointing out some of the foibles of the White House press corps, of which I am a member. Let's start with what happened on Monday. I kid you not, I'm not making any of this up. On Monday, Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre held one of her daily press briefings. One of the very first questions asked of the President of the United States representative in the Brady briefing room had absolutely nothing to do with the President. I'm not kidding. Take a look.
Trump was the first to endorse eliminating taxes on tips. He's accusing Vice President Harris of stealing his idea. So did she get this idea from Trump?
Look, I'm not going to respond to a presidential candidate. I think their campaign could speak to that directly.
This is one of the first specific policy endorsements that we've heard from the Vice President. Is there anything you can explain about kind of how she came to this endorsement and how she'll address the criticism?
That was said in a campaign context, so I would have to refer you to the campaign. I'm sure they can speak more to that.
That's right. It was about the Vice President. And asking the presidential press secretary about the vice president is kind of like going into a Lakers locker room after a ball game and asking about the Green Bay Packers. It don't make no sense. Not at all. No sense at all. The President of the United States was engaged in a lot of stuff this week that was very important, but you wouldn't know it coming out of the mouths of some of the reporters in the White House. And let me be blunt. If your first question to ask the press secretary of the President of the United States is about the vice president, you're in the wrong room. Have to get that one off my chest. Now, this week I'm going to introduce you to a fellow named Dan Dalton. Now, Dan has been sales for United Press International Syndicate for years. They're the ones that handle, let's see, who do they handle? William F. Buckley, Dear Abby, I think it was, Calvin and Hobbes, Doonesbury. He started out as a reporter. He's had a long career, and he's going to tell us one of the things I've been talking about for a while. When you put advertising ahead of editorial content, you kill journalism. But that's what we've been doing, and there's a reason for it. And there's a problem, too. This is a warning sign for the journalism world. Most television news is gathered from newspapers. Nationally, that's why the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, the LA Times, the Chicago Sun-Times, and other large newspapers have such sway, because they have reporters in the field who actually investigate and do the stories that newspapers print and television stations and television networks then cover. Very little original reporting, and I'm not going to say all original reporting rests in newspapers, but a good deal of it. They are the backbone of journalism. Or they were. But they've sold out newspapers to the point that backbone has been replaced by clickbait. And what's left is a pale shadow of its former self, but there is hope. There's also a loss of literacy, and we're going to talk about that too. It's very important to build a literate crowd of people to read your newspaper, because then they become literate, critical thinking, and involved voters. This is a vicious cycle that's been ongoing in the journalism for years. Who better to talk about the sales end of that than a guy who's made his life in and his career in there, and now has taken on an altruistic turn of events in his life to try and re-educate people, to educate people in literacy. So, I want to introduce you to Dan Dalton. Hi, and welcome back to Reverse Shot, the show where we take a look at the press, we turn the camera around, take a look at the problems of the press, the foibles, and try to maybe work our way through some solutions. And if you've heard me talk, you know that I've said one of the problems in the press world is that we have people in the newsroom who dictate their coverage based on advertising, rather than advertising following the content follows the advertising. And we've also had a problem over the years with lack of literacy, and we've also lost in newspapers a hell of a lot of our readers, and there's reasons for that. And who better to bring in to talk about it than Dan Dalton? He was regional sales manager, and national sales manager, international sales director for Universal Press Syndicate from 85 through 2001. You've heard of a lot of the property that they handled: The Far Side, Calvin and Hobbes, Dear Abby, Roger Ebert, William F. Buckley, Doonesbury, one of my favorite. And now he's got a new project that he's working on, and we're going to talk a lot about that, but that's called Kid Scoop, and we'll get to that in a bit. But Dan, thanks for joining me. The reason why I wanted to talk to you, I think it's really important to talk a little bit about what's happened to the press over the last 40 years, and I've been really impressed with some of the social media posts that you've had about newspapers over the, in the last few weeks. So from your point of view, you were in sales. What did we do wrong? How did we get to where we are now?
Wow, you got all day. No, no. I'm not sure that there's any one particular thing that contributes to where we're at now. I think it's a series of things, and of course, I'm not telling anybody anything new, but the fact that the internet came of age, and as I've told people, the moment that Bill Gates gave an individual a computer, that individual became a publisher.
Right.
You got to think about that. You think about that for a minute. That the computer empowered individuals to become their own media outlets. And, we saw people race into the lurch. We saw, there, again, a myriad of reasons what contributed to it. One of the things was, at first, the newspaper industry was slow to react and figured, what, we'll just go online and we'll give our copy away for free. That'll just bring the people back around, and then we can upsell them on the print side again. Well, we know where that led them. And that was an impasse. I think they've been attempting to regroup ever since,
and never successfully been able to do so. Just some poor. Well, I always go back to the breaking down of it used to be limited media ownership, so you could only own 2 or 3 properties, and succeeding administrations in the White House have dissolved that. The FCC dissolved that, so you could buy out more properties, and you got the old. I call them vulture capitalists who have, owned several hundred papers but have gutted them. And like you said, we were talking before we got on, I understand their responsibility to their shareholders, but I think that they're short-sighted because the one thing that I liked about, we also talked about Barry Bingham, was that he accepted a lower profit, and he could do this because he owned the property himself, to maintain steady growth without cutting his nose to spite his face, going for the most you could get at one time. He decided on a steady growth approach and steady, solid reporting as the coin of the realm. Vetted factual information, doing the job that he thought he was supposed to do. He thought he could keep an audience, and they did for many, many years until he sold to Gannett. But you were in sales, so it's a tough row to hoe, that balancing act between editorial content and sales.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I've been thinking, I've had this conversation with other publishers and owners and general managers, and I got to tell you, the thing that interests me the most right now, the how would you say, sort of the light. I don't know if it's at the end of the tunnel or it's a train or what, but they're when the pandemic hit. This is fascinating to me because I was a sociology major. When the pandemic hit, I sort of saw the writing on the wall that when people moved to the hinterlands to work remotely, I knew that areas where they had brain drain for years, all the kids left and never came back after college. We're going to see a return, right? And what I'm seeing now is at the smaller, lesser-sized circulation properties, often independent. These people moved to the hinterlands so that they could work remotely. Once they got there, they looked around and they were like, I'd love to know my neighbor. I'd love to know the merchants downtown. I want a sense of community. And there's something, it's almost nostalgic that you want to return to 30s, 40s, 50s. I remember pictures of, like, when there was a huge news event, the newspapers would put the papers up in the windows downtown, and people would be 30 or 40 deep reading the newspapers in the windows. So I think that, in spite of what's going on at the larger size circulation dailies, the publicly traded company daily or newspapers, the ray of hope is the small individuals that are actually serving their community and, being the fourth estate and actually reporting on things that might go awry in the community. And you are probably well familiar with the city of Bell in California and what happened out there.
Yeah, well, today we had the article that is making its way around the world today is in Kansas, when the police chief there, the ex-police chief, was just charged with obstruction of justice by raiding the local newsroom. Remember, the woman, the mother of that the owner, she died the day after. So you do see that ray of hope with small community newspapers, and I've always said they're the backbone of journalism. Most national stories have a start at a small newspaper, and you connect the dots. Here's someone that got poisoned over here. Oh, Dursban, this chemical is bad, and you start looking at all the different connections of all the different stories around the country, and boom, you have a national story. Infrastructure began that way. Water problems. All of that stuff starts at a local level, having a young reporter covering the city council, the PTA, the water board,
yep, exactly,
stuff like that. And we, if as long as we can do that, I still maintain that the coin of realm is vetted factual information, and who better to do it than the small newspapers. But one of the things that we have, and this is the thing where I really want to bring up is, I operated community newspapers for years. And when I was a kid, when I was in school, there was a thing called the Weekly Reader that you would get. It was circulated in school. Our local community newspaper, when I was smaller, published an edition once a week that made its way to the public schools. And there was an education page in that newspaper. So it was the education page, and all the local school news was in there, and you read it. Now, you are involved in some, and we lost that for years. You don't see any emphasis on literacy or teaching news to kids today, but you're involved with something that does. And I think it's really important, because there's a thing that you mentioned. This is in your LinkedIn. For those that don't know, go to Dan Patio Dalton. We'll get to the patio part in a minute, Dan. But this, because I know you're enjoying yourself on your patio. But by the third grade, that has been identified as where reading literacy, ends, because it's the final year where kids are learning to read, and after that they are reading to learn, as you point out.
Exactly.
Which is really keen. So you're bringing back something that I remember as a child that we have been, my kids didn't experience it. My wife and I had to do it independently, and this is one of the most important parts of journalism, is teaching literacy, and critical thinking comes with literacy, and everything that you do as an adult comes with literacy. So tell me about KidScoop and why KidScoop, and how effective have you been in doing it?
Well, we're being extremely effective, but to initiate a conversation, Brian, I'll share with you what I thought was urban legend. But I found it in Forbes magazine from a number of years ago. And the first paragraph in the story was that, in fact, Texas uses fourth grade reading scores to project the number of prison cells they're going to need in a decade.
Yeah, that's true.
Again, let me repeat that.
Yeah.
Fourth grade reading scores so they can plan. Yeah. And what we find out is, 80% of the prison population is functionally illiterate. Or 80%, that's for juveniles. 65% of the prison population is functionally illiterate. So, it's like I tell people, look, one way or another, the community is going to end up paying for this. You want to pay now or you want to pay later? And that's why I'm here to talk to you about, KidScoop. And this is normally the spiel that I would give to a publisher or a general manager or an ad director who was going out to speak to potential sponsors in the community. It's like, let's get to this altruism first and talk about getting more kids to read, because you're going to laugh at this, Brian. My thing is to disarm the person that you're going to speak to about sponsoring the page, right? And they always want to know what's in it for you coming from the newspaper when you come in the door. Because when you walk in the door, the hackles go up on their neck. Oh, they're here from the paper. They want my advertising dollar, da-da-da-da-da-da, right? And you can just disarm immediately and say, look, I'll talk to you about advertising in a few minutes. But first, I want to talk to you about literacy and what it means to the community. But before I do that, let me just disarm you and tell you already what's in it for me coming from the newspaper. The more kids that I get reading a newspaper, the more likelihood that they may actually become newspaper subscribers at some point. And if they become a newspaper subscriber, that means my circulation number goes up. And if my circulation number goes up, that gives me a reason to raise your rate card, because now I'm delivering more eyeballs to help you sell more goods and services. Do you see how that works?
And the concept of using that money to put reporters out in the field to cover the stuff that we don't cover now. It's a healthy, it's a circular. I get it.
But here's the big finish, though.
Okay.
Now you turn to the sponsor that you've been given the spiel to, right? And you say to them, now let me ask you, what's in it for you, Mr. Manufacturer, Mr. Big Business in the community, right? Let me ask you. It's a rhetorical question. Do you need an educated workforce?
That's it. Funny how those things work. But here's the thing, Dan. We have forgotten in this country the value of media. Like you said, everyone became a publisher when you put together, when the first computer went out. But not everyone became a responsible publisher. Not everyone became an educated journalist. I have kids that come to me every day. And when I was running newspapers, even more so, they would go, here's what I think. And I go, I don't care what you think. I barely care what I think. What do you know? And we've forgotten the thing that makes us valuable to advertisers, the thing that makes us valuable in the community is vetted factual information. I maintain that's the coin of the realm. And to do that, you have to have readers that are literate. Literacy is huge.
Well, let me pull the curtain back for you a little bit. Wait. You'll like this finish. And I broach it with some of the people that I'm actually, pitching. Is look, yes. At the end of the day, I would like to find more subscribers. I would like every child to read by the end of third grade. Okay, because we want more newspaper subscribers. But I actually have an ulterior motive. Dare I broach it? I'd like to have an educated electorate.
How dare you?
You mean vote on issues as opposed to me picking a team? Red, blue.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I like that idea.
It's so much easier to put a cap on.
Yes, yeah. Even if you don't know what the letters stand for, but here's the thing.
Yeah.
That is a reflection of Ben Bakdikian, who was the Washington Post editor for a long time and was taught in college. But he said, look, ultimately, your responsibility as a journalist isn't to your owner, isn't to your boss, it isn't even to yourself. Your responsibility is to the audience, to educate and to inform them. And that's your job. And we've become lost in this business, in the fact that it's just the quick buck, the clickbait that brings in the ads now without any long-term thinking. Do you ever talk to people about that lack of vision?
Oh, all the time. Let me see if I can reach it. Hold on. Got a prop.
Okay.
You may know this one already.
Yeah. The death of truth.
It's all about algorithms.
Yeah.
That's all it's about. It's all about algorithms. It's about, now that we're on this canvas and we're protected by that statute that doesn't hold the media companies responsible for the content they post on their websites, they cut the algorithms loose. They said, find the most outrageous, ostentatious, weird, whack, whatever you want out there, but assign value to it so it creates clicks, because that means we can sell more advertising. Truth in reporting be damned.
Well,
You know,
I know, but what that pisses me off about it, and you tell me because you're on the business side of it, but when I look at it, that's short-sighted thinking. You get a lot of clicks now, but you turn a lot of people off, and today you're at the point where people are going, screw the mainstream media. I'm not going to read it. I'm not going to listen to it. I'm not going to watch it. And so they've shot them. We, and I say collectively we, have shot ourselves, not even in the foot, but right through the temple with our inability to understand the long-range implications of what
implications.
I mean, you tell me, how do you sell clickbait? I mean, Kid Scoop, you're selling literacy. This is a noble cause. But on any given day, I don't know how you go out and sell today's journalism, because to me, it's like selling a car without an engine. You may get people to click. Nobody's reading it. Nobody's watching.
Well, let me interject. Yeah, we're back to sort of the grassroots level in reintroducing print to young children. Okay, and part of that spiel is, you'll love this, we've actually gotten tremendous feedback of late. It's a cultural phenomena going on right now that could feed to a newspaper renaissance. But we've got parents and teachers that they find anything online just an anathema. They just don't want anything to do with it with their kids anymore. They don't want remote learning. And when they get this paper in their hand, a print product in their hand, they love it. Now, let me warp speed ahead. The teachers, they're coming on board, because it used to be we'd get pushback from them going, look, I got enough on my plate already. I don't want to teach additional social studies, this and that. It's all in our presentation. When, in fact, if you're getting a weekly newspaper and you got, the Kid Scoop product there, or whatever product's in there, the teacher can use that newspaper to reinforce lesson plans. It actually becomes labs, because in a newspaper, you got geography, you got science, you got math, you got financial literacy for children. Boom, 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 boom. And I got to tell you, these children that are getting it now, you're going to love this. They've been tethered to screens their entire life. Think about that. These kids have been tethered to screens their entire life, right? You're handing them a print product, and the one thing across the bottom of if you saw on the Kid Scoop News on the page one, is this belongs to, and you write your name in there. And you got to remember doing that as a child. Yeah, that's empowering. That is empowering. This is mine. And now we got kids that are going down that path, and I got to tell you, it's rewarding. And the other thing at the end of the day for me, kids and dogs above the fold, and I'm not selling pets.
No dog stories. Well, I tell you what I used, and I'm glad you bring that up, because I've testified, like in Maryland and other state legislatures, when they try to repeal public service ads. They want to do it on their website. They want to do it on. We have huge problems with anti-SLAPP, problems, like in rich people suing the shit out of a small community newspaper. We have to have protection. And the legislatures don't seem to get it. And what I did is, you held up a book. I would hold up a copy of the 1855, the original copy of the Montgomery County Sentinel. I'd hold it up in court and go, look, I know you like the internet. It's ephemeral. I can go in, I can hack it, I can change it at any point in time. Read this. This is from 1855. Yep. This you can't hack it, you can't change it. It's finite. And in a court of law, it rules, because there you go. And I finally got some people to listen to me that way, and I found that people do still, they say that newspapers are dying. I think the government is trying to kill them. With all the legislation. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, from day one they've been trying to do that, because who wants to be outed? Right.
Yes.
Yeah, it's Yeah,
shoot
go
the
ahead.
messenger. That's the idea. Shoot the messenger, and make sure there's no one covering the state house. Make sure there's no one covering city hall. Make sure there's no one at the water board meetings. And then you do what you want. That corruption goes up when newspapers die. And you know, and you're probably well aware of this too. Most television, radio stations, bloggers, live stream, whatever you're doing now, owes a debt to newspapers because those are the last bastions of journalism where there are actually reporters in the field doing original work. Everyone in television really just puts together a package based on what was in the newspaper. Which too bad you can't sell that.
Funny it's funny. Yeah, it's funny you should mention that. I had a gig as a TV field reporter for a while, right? And I left the newspaper in Brownsville, and when I got over to the newsroom at the broadcast outlet, right, I was like stunned that my new colleagues were professing this great admiration for where I came. Like they were almost reverent. They're going, "You worked at a print newspaper?" I was like, "Oh yeah." He goes, "Yeah," and I was like, I had to find out. Well, why are you like this? And he goes, "Well, your stories, you could go retrieve them and read them again and again and again." I was like, my stuff just disappears into the ether.
Yeah, that's. Yeah, and they depended upon you as a source for their stories. That's newspapers always the source for television news. Well, listen.
The publisher there used to have 6 VHS set up in his office to record all the neighboring local television broadcasts so he could catch them in their stuff.
I covered a building collapse down in Brownsville in the 80s. It was the Brownsville building collapse, and I remember we went and edited our piece there in Brownsville at one of the local stations out in the middle of nowhere. It was Well, listen, we close,
great news town, though.
Oh God, yes. Oh well, the slave ranch stuff went on over to the border in Matamoros. There's always something in Brownsville, and I was down there for Trump when he was down there. But look, as we close this up, I guess what I want to ask you is, as you've talked today, you sound like you're hopeful. Are you hopeful for the future of newspapers?
I am for anything that improves our lot.
But are you hopeful? Do you think newspapers will survive?
Yeah, I do, and like I said when I began the conversation, it's the mom and pops out there. It's the people that know that they have to serve the community first, and everything else will sort of fall in place behind that. And I'm anxious to see that continue to grow and prosper.
Well, listen, man, Dan, I really appreciate you being with us today and talking with us about newspapers and their problems and their solutions. It's what this show's all about, and I really do appreciate you being here. Can we have you back sometime?
I'd love to come back, I might even tell you some jokes.
No, I'm telling you, it's a tough room, you know? Hey, how you doing?
hey, I gave blood, and I get no respect, and the family thanked me for saving the dog's life.
Yeah, and I was an ugly child, too, you know? Anyway.
I know that one. All right, we go all day. Brian, thanks.
Well, thank you for joining us, man. And this is Reverse Shot. We'll catch you next time. So that's it for this issue of Reverse Shot, where we turn the camera around and point it right at the press. I want to thank the Mary Trump Media Network, and I want to encourage all of you to hit that subscribe button. This is independent journalism, and we are holding people accountable, and we need your help and your support to do it. So again, until next time, my name is Brian Karem. You can catch me in the White House. You can catch me on Mary Trump's show. You can catch me on, well, as long as they'll still have me, on certain radio and television networks around the country and around the world. But then I also want to encourage you to buy Free the Press, which talks about this a lot. That's my book. So until next time, I'm Brian Karem. This is Reverse Shot. Have a good one.